Hey, what's going on, guys? Jason here, and thanks for stopping by my shop today. In today's Small Time Shop Talk, we are going to discuss the ins and outs of picking a donor vehicle for your project. I've got 5 very simple to follow subjects that we're going to go over, and while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and discuss my donor YJ. A lot of the problems that I'm going to show you with this YJ carry through all the years of Wranglers in specific. There are some problems that are specific to YJs and some problems that just carry through all of them. So if you want to know a little bit more about what you should look for or what you should do when you're picking your donor vehicle, make sure you stick around. All right, what a pain that was. Alright guys, so what I wanted to do here is I wanted to start off by looking at my donor Jeep. Go ahead and take a walk around it. You can already see that I've got the axles pulled out from underneath of it and it's sitting up on jack stands. Now this vehicle was complete. I drove it home, it runs and drives, so that's a very important consideration in all this, is how many parts are you going to be able to use and how many parts can you sell to recoup a little bit of cost. Now this donor Jeep, it's been run through the ringer. It had a couple broken motor mount or a couple broken body mounts, and that caused the whole body to sag and it busted the grill. Somebody did a pretty hack job right here of arc welding a piece of angle iron. They put a body lift on it, which was probably one of the main reasons that everything started to go bad. But if you look under the front here, you can see evidence of where the frame actually cracked. Now if you've watched through some of my videos of building our other frame, you'll notice that I did my best to support this front end of the frame right here. Now you can see here that this is cracked all the way through. This is very typical of a Wrangler of this year. The steering box, if it's not braced, it'll either pull through the bolt holes here or it'll crack the frame right here. Now somebody's done an absolutely terrible job of fixing this with just whatever steel they had laying around. There are companies that make parts to just completely replace this if this happens to your Jeep, but I decided to go ahead and put a different frame underneath of it. Now if you look through here, you'll also see that the frame is just covered in rust. It's really rusting away. It's in pretty rough condition. I did have to go ahead and cut the springs out from underneath of it. I have decided to go ahead and hold off and give those to a person that asked for them on Facebook. No cost, so if you're watching, I still got the springs in my garage. Now you come around here to the back and you'll see more evidence of where somebody tried to do just a terrible repair. Now right here, I think what happened is the body mounts in the front started to break and sag, and somebody tried to just weld this piece of metal right here to kind of get in the body and just hold it up and hold the body level. Well, that had the opposite effect, and it actually ended up piercing the rear body support and started rusting away right here. Now the rust here is pretty significant, but you can buy these parts readily available online. They sell all these parts as replacements, to include this entire rear support for the body and for the frame. Now you can also see this tailgate here, a couple bolts when I was pulling off the spare tire holder snapped off. This also had some diamond plate corners. I'll go ahead and put a picture up right here of what the vehicle looked like when I first got it. Now I haven't done much in the way of stripping stuff off of it yet, except for the diamond plate to see what the condition was underneath, which I'm glad I did. You can also see here there are several spots on the body where the rust has started to eat through. Once again, these spots are, I mean, they're bad, but what I'm using this Jeep for, it'll be okay. I can fix all this. This is going to be a very extensive build. You'll also notice here in the actual back corner, this entire frame rail has been replaced. Now it doesn't look like anybody used a safety cap or a good quality replacement. It looks like somebody once again just used whatever steel they had laying around, and they did a pretty poor job of it. so we're not going to worry about that. You'll see also here on the frame where the frame is rusted through completely behind the shock towers. Now when I put the frame together, I made sure that I coated this frame internally and externally, and I'm also going to put self-leveling epoxy to keep anything from falling down in that hole right there and causing any kind of problems. One of the main reasons that this stuff rusts away is because people get them muddy and they just don't clean them when they're done. So if you got a Jeep, make sure you clean it up. Now here's where stuff gets interesting. You can see that that was probably the first body mount to fail. It pierced all the way through the floor, and somebody didn't replace it, they just moved it. So once again, here's another one that was moved, and you could tell that they're moved because their original locations are still there but damaged. So when we get this tub off, we're going to have some pretty significant repairs to make, but that's okay. I expected this. I got this Jeep for a very, very good deal. The top that I bought separately. This did not have a top on it when I got it. I paid almost as much for the top as I did for the entire Jeep. It's a crack-free top. It's in excellent condition. So that's going to be a good addition to the vehicle. We also got a couple weird things going on here. We got 2 sets of mirrors. Don't quite understand that, but luckily these ones are just bolted to the hinges and they can come off. Moving toward the front, both the fenders have well, Bondo in them right here. So both the fenders are pretty much shot. And moving back around to the front here, we got the front bumper, which I guess is not in terrible condition, but we're not going to use it anyway. We got these pretty ugly squares. We're going to get rid of those. Probably the only thing off the front end that I'm going to keep is the wiring harness, the headlights, the marker lights, and the 2 front fender caps. Other than that, this whole front end of this Jeep, well, I'll keep the hood too, but everything else is going to be replaced. Now we do have some rust that we got to deal with here on the doors and on the windshield pillar, but the most important thing about this Jeep is I got it for an extremely good deal, and it's got a clean title. Now why is a clean title important to me? Well, when I go to insure this vehicle, I'm going to insure it for replacement cost. I'm not necessarily going to insure it for vehicle value. So I'm going to go ahead and get all this stuff compiled up and put together, all the work that I've got into it, and I'm going to insure it as an entire project. Being a clean title really gives you an advantage and stuff like that. If you wreck something with an R title, you're not going to get the payout that you normally would. Even though this entire vehicle is going to be pretty much rebuilt, we're still going to end up with a lot of good costs associated with it as far as parts go. We do have an excellent donor. This is an automatic. We do have some rust in the floorboards, which is okay. We can get floorboard panels for it. I do like the column shift automatic. It keeps stuff. I do like the column shift automatic. It keeps stuff inside nice and clean. Once again, this thing was filthy when I got it. Had a lot of mud all over it. You can see the speaker pod starting to fall apart. The grab handle's ripped up there, but that's okay. Once again, this is all stuff that we can fix. The seats are complete, which is nice. There's no rear seat in it to speak of, but once again, that's okay. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Now we do have some more issues here on the inside as far as the floor being broken right here, but all that's repairable. That's not going to be a big deal. We got some separate plastics and stuff right here. But all in all, guys, the Jeep is complete, and that's what we need. Every bit of this can be restored and fixed to the way that we want it. Now let's go ahead and head back in the shop, and we're going to talk about our 5 different categories of buying a donor Jeep yourself. Alright guys, we're back in the shop, and man, it is hot. I am pouring sweat all over the place. Sorry, I look like I'm probably exercising, but we're going to go ahead and go over our 5 subjects now for picking your donor vehicle. And the first one is the most obvious: purpose. Well, what are you building it for? Is this going to be a Riddler? Is it, I mean, is it going to be your daily driver? Is it going to be something relegated to just trail use? What is your purpose? That's going to dictate a lot. Now, if you're just building a trail rig, you don't need a clean title. You don't need anything like that, because you're probably going to tow it in and out of where you're going. Now, if you do want something that you can drive on the street and use it for its intended purpose, then you should probably go ahead and get a clean title vehicle, depending on how comfortable you are with total loss coverage in case of an accident. That's the main reason that I got a clean title on this. Now, I know that it's going to be completely rebuilt from top to bottom, but I don't want to make the sacrifice of having an R title just in case something does happen on the street and I need to get the vehicle replaced. One of the good things about Jeeps and vehicles like Jeeps is a lot of the components that you buy once, and you can switch them over from Jeep to Jeep to Jeep to Jeep. A lot of drifters are very familiar with this. They just buy shells, take a lot of their good parts, over to their next project. So make sure you know and you have a very clearly defined purpose. If you're just going to destroy it, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to have this vehicle for the long haul, or you have long intentions for it, make sure that you buy something appropriate for what you're going to use it for. So the second thing I want to talk about is timeline. What is your timeline for getting this thing done? Is this something that you want finished next week? Or is this something that you have plenty of time on and you don't mind investing time and money into it? Now, some people have this misconception that we can all just build vehicles as fast as we want to in our garages and they're going to last forever and everything's going to be good. When the truth of the matter is these things take time. If you're doing a full overhaul, a full rebuild, and you have a full-time job and a family, you know, an hour or two here or there might be all that you get to invest in an entire week. So make sure you have a timeline that's appropriate with your goals. This Jeep right here, I'm hoping to have it done this year, running and driving, but I'm not, going to die if I don't. This isn't something that's going to make or break me. This is something that I, once again, invest $25 a week into. I've saved money. This is just a budget project. And I hate to use the word budget because honestly, there's a lot of good parts on here, and I hate to think that I've cheaped out on anything. But there are some parts that I've gotten that are cheaper than others. I'm trying to keep with a timeline, but the timeline for me isn't a critical factor. If a timeline for you is a critical factor, then you're probably going to want to buy a vehicle that's more complete to start. You're going to want to buy something that's a little bit more turnkey and ready to go. This vehicle is going to be built 100% completely to my specifications and nobody else's. So out of the box, doesn't really matter to me. I got a long extended timeline and I have plenty of time to do this. So make sure your timeline suits your project. So guys, the next thing that we're going to talk about is availability. Availability is a big, huge part of all this. If you're trying to build an old Land Rover Discovery or something like that, the parts are just simply not going to be as available as if you're trying to build a Jeep Cherokee. Let's just go ahead and get that straight right off the bat. Availability is a big, huge part of all this. If you've got to spend time and resources scouring for parts, and you got this one particular part that's just impossible to find, well, your entire project's going to be held up for that. So make sure that your timeline and your availability suit your purpose and your goal. Once again, if you're spending time and resources looking for one part when you could be working on other things, that can kind of get to be a bit of a pain. Now, if you've got 2 Land Rover Discoveries in your yard and you have all the parts you need, then there goes availability. You've got everything you need, but make sure that you're not hung up on that one part, that one specific part that's got to ship from Australia or something like that. Just make sure that your availability is reasonable. The best way to put it is just have your ducks in a row before you start all this. Make sure that you're reasonable and you can reasonably acquire the parts before you even start the project. Do a little bit of research. Check and see if the things that you want to do are available. Once again, it's a huge part of any project. The next thing I want to talk about is your skill set. Make sure your skill set fits with your project. If you're going to be doing a full frame off restoration like I am and building a full custom vehicle, make sure that you're able to do it. Because if you're not able to do it, then you're going to get hung up a lot. You're going to be doing a lot of research, you're going to be asking for help, and you might even have to send the vehicle off to somebody else to build for you, and your cost is just going to go through the roof if you got to do that. Now, I'm pretty comfortable with everything that I got to do with this Jeep, so it's a good project for me personally. Some people might not be able to tackle everything that we're doing here. I mean, we're doing everything from brakes to steering and everything in between. So make sure that you have the skill to tackle a project that you want to tackle. Now, there are smaller projects that you can do on a vehicle that's a little bit more turnkey to build your confidence. If you've never torn apart a diesel engine, you don't want to invest all the money into buying a vehicle having never worked on a diesel engine yet. You should probably have familiarity with everything that you're going to have to do. Now, there are a bunch of fine resources out there, forums, and a lot of good help, but you need to be a mechanically inclined person if you're going to tackle something mechanically inclined. So make sure that your actual skill set matches what you need to do here. Once again, skill set is a huge part of all this. A lot of people have big dreams about building these vehicles and they just get in over their heads. You can go on eBay and type in project, or go on Craigslist and type in project, and you'll see a lot of projects that people have just failed at. They've started them, didn't have either the skill set, availability of parts, or any other reason, and they've just abandoned them. So if you're going to hold to this, be reasonable with your own skill set. Make sure that this is something that you are able to do. So last but not least, we're going to talk about budget. Now, this is the one that hangs a lot of people up. Your budget can make or break you, literally, financially make or break you. So make sure that you hit all your other points first, and that's going to help you work out a budget. If you don't have the skill set, you're going to have to outsource the labor. If you don't have availability of parts, guess what? Those parts are going to come at a much higher premium than you probably want to pay. If your timeline is short, you might end up having to pay for somebody to help you out. If your purpose is far beyond your timeline, then you're probably going to have to pay to expedite stuff. So once again, your budget is the last thing you should consider. A lot of people consider budget right off the bat. Now, if you just want a turnkey vehicle, then hey, budget is the first thing that you consider. But if you're actually building a project, then budget is the last thing you consider, because it's probably going to shift on the fly. Your budget's probably going to change a lot as the project goes along. So once again, make sure that your budget is the last thing. If you want more of a turnkey project, hey, your budget's the most important thing. But if you're in for the long haul, the budget doesn't really matter. You've got a vision and you want to build it. That's just the way it is. So don't get hung up on money. Money is the last thing you should think about. A lot of people just get dollar signs in their eyes and they don't finish these projects. So make sure that everything else is in order before you even consider your budget. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed walking around my donor Jeep, and I hope that maybe some of the tips that I've given you will help out in your own project or your own purchase for a donor vehicle. Just remember the easy 5 tips. You got purpose, timeline, availability, skill, and budget. All 5 of those, very important. So make sure you take care, and we'll see you next time.